My brother had an affair with my fiancée, and my family chose him. 5 years later, he fell into a coma. Now my mom wants me to raise his kid. I'm 30 years old now, but 5 years ago, my life completely fell apart. Just a month before my wedding, I found out my fiancée had been cheating on me with my own brother. The only reason they even came clean was because she got pregnant and wanted to leave the baby. My ex-fiancée, Emily, is also 30, and my brother, Jake, is 33. As it turned out, they had been sleeping together the entire time since Emily and I got engaged. We had been together since junior high, dated all through college, and getting engaged felt like the natural next step. I thought we were solid. But apparently, after the engagement, Emily decided to cheat on me with Jake. The way it all started made me sick. Just a couple of days after I proposed, Jake told Emily that he had always had feelings for her. He felt like he needed to confess before it was too late, and she became my wife. And just like that, Emily suddenly realized she was developing feelings for him too. They had even been flirting behind my back at family gatherings. But despite that, she stayed with me because, in her own words, my brother wasn't as reliable as I was. I had no idea any of this was happening until a few months before our wedding, when Emily and Jake sat me down, along with my parents, to tell me that they were in love and planning to be together. Emily said she couldn't marry me because she was carrying Jake's child. I felt like my entire world caved in. I was devastated and in complete denial. I told her she needed to come home with me, cut things off with Jake, and fix what she had ruined. But my mother shut that down immediately. She made it clear that Emily and Jake would be together whether I liked it or not, and I had no choice but to accept it. I was stunned. The betrayal from Emily was one thing, but my own mother supporting them? That was something I never saw coming. At least my dad had the decency to look ashamed. He tried to comfort me, but my mom? She was fully on their side. To make things worse, she told me that if I had a problem with the situation, I needed to keep quiet because Emily was pregnant, and I had no right to stress her out. My mom was so obsessed with the idea of finally having a grandchild that she completely dismissed what I was going through. She actually argued with me, trying to justify what was happening. After that conversation, Emily moved in with my family. Her own parents were disgusted by what she had done and wanted nothing to do with her, so she had nowhere else to go. Of course, the wedding was called off. My parents covered all the costs, so I didn't have to worry about that. But what I did have to deal with was the fact that my family had essentially kicked me out of their lives. I refused to speak to Emily or Jake, and because of that, they cut me off completely. For the past 5 years, I haven't had a single conversation with any of them. The only person who ever tried to reach out was my dad, but I ignored him. As soon as I went no contact, it was like I had never existed to them. It took me years to process what happened. I had been with Emily for most of my life. I really thought she was my future. Losing her, along with my family, was something I never expected. I had to go to therapy just to get through it. And now, 5 years later, Jake is in a coma, and my mother is demanding something I never saw coming. Even now, I can't say that I've fully moved on, but I've learned how to live with it. Some relatives still kept in touch, so I found out through them that Emily had given birth to a son, my brother Jake's child. Just a month after he was born, they did a paternity test to confirm that the baby was Jake's, not mine. Once that was settled, they had no reason to involve me in anything anymore. Jake and Emily got married and had been together for the past 5 years. I assumed they were doing fine. But about a week ago, I got a call from my mother, completely out of the blue. That alone was shocking, considering she was the one who had been the most obsessed with supporting Jake and Emily. She had stood by them in a way that honestly felt unhealthy, so hearing from her after all this time caught me off guard. I ignored the call at first, but then she sent me a message saying she urgently needed to talk to me. Curiosity got the best of me, so I called her back. When she answered, she was in tears. That's when she told me Jake had been in a serious accident. The driver who hit him had fled the scene, and Jake ended up in a coma. Doctors couldn't say how long it would take for him to recover, if he ever would. This had happened a week ago, and 3 days later, his condition became critical. That's when my mother decided to reach out. At first, I assumed she was calling to ask me to visit him, to be there for the family. And honestly, I was prepared to do that. No matter what had happened between us, this was a serious situation, and I wasn't heartless. It would have been understandable if she had simply wanted me there. But that wasn't why she was calling. She suddenly switched the conversation to something completely unexpected. She wanted me to step up and take care of Emily and her son. At first, I didn't even understand what she was getting at. Then she spelled it out. Now that Jake was essentially gone, she expected me to step in and be there for Emily and the kid in every possible way. I asked her to clarify because I still couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's when she explained that she wasn't just asking for financial support. She actually wanted me to move in with them and take care of them like they were my responsibility. She claimed that she would have taken them in herself, but she was too old now, and it would be too much for her. That's why she had reached out. Not to reconnect, not to apologize, but to drop this absurd request on me and expect me to say yes right then and there. I was furious. 5 years of silence, and now, suddenly, she was demanding something like this? Look, I understand that Emily and her son are in a tough spot right now. But if they needed support, it should come from the people closest to them, not me. Not the person they betrayed and never even bothered to apologize to. So, of course, I told my mother that there was absolutely no way I was doing that, and that she was out of her mind if she thought I'd agree. She immediately started arguing, but I wasn't going to waste my time on that. I was already irritated enough. I didn't need to ruin my entire day listening to her nonsense, so I hung up and blocked her again. I tried to focus on my own life after that, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the thought of what Jake and Emily were going through. As much as I hated to admit it, I did feel bad for them. But that didn't mean I was about to do what my mother wanted. Step in and take my brother's place. That would be beyond weird. Jake is still alive. Yes, he's in a coma, but that's not the same as being gone. Yet my mother was acting like he had already been buried, and it was my job to fill in for him. The whole thing made me deeply uncomfortable. Later that same day, I decided to call my dad. After 5 years of silence, the conversation felt awkward, but I thought he might be more reasonable than my mother. After a couple of minutes of small talk, I asked him how Jake was doing. He told me things weren't looking great. Then I brought up the conversation I'd had with my mom, expecting him to give me a more level-headed take. But instead, he told me that she wasn't wrong for expecting this from me. I was completely caught off guard. My dad had always been the more rational parent, the one who at least seemed to have some sense. So I asked if he was actually serious. He was. He went on to say that Emily and I had a long history, and that, no matter how things had been between me and the family these past 5 years, I was still part of them. At the end of the day, I was blood. And if anyone should step up and take responsibility for the family, it should be me. He even had the nerve to say my mother's expectations weren't all that unreasonable. That conversation completely threw me off. And to be honest, I still don't know what to do. For the past week, I've been avoiding contact with my family altogether. I've even distanced myself from the relatives I do talk to because I'm afraid someone will bring this up, and I'll be forced to explain why I'm refusing. At the same time, I feel guilty. I know my family is struggling, and while they might not need me financially, I know they could use emotional support. But how am I supposed to be there for them when they're asking me to do something so absurd? I haven't even gone to the hospital to see Jake because the entire situation makes me so uncomfortable. I also can't bring myself to talk about it with my friends. They already know how things went down between me and my family after the wedding was called off. But this is on a whole other level. That's why I'm putting this out there, because I need an outside perspective. Friends and family are always going to have their own biases, but I need an objective opinion. Because if I don't figure this out soon, I swear I'm going to lose my mind. I feel like I'm being dragged back to that same dark place I was in after I found out about Emily and Jake. Back when they first betrayed me, I couldn't think about anything else. I obsessed over it for months, and I don't want to go through that again. Took me years to rebuild my life. But at the same time, I keep asking myself, is it really that selfish of me to refuse to visit my family after what happened? Am I really in the wrong for not stepping up? So, I'm asking, what do you guys think? Update 1. Hey everyone, I just wanted to check in. For now, I've decided not to see my family. It's too much for me right now. I didn't even realize how much my anxiety had spiked over the past week because of everything my parents said. But I've started taking my meds again, and I'm trying to work through it. I also wanted to say thank you. The amount of support I've received, both in the comments and through private messages, has been overwhelming. Knowing that so many people understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not crazy for feeling this way, it means everything. I'm incredibly grateful. After everything that happened, I finally decided to open up to a few close friends. I trusted them enough to share what was going on in my life because, honestly, I don't think I can handle all of this alone. They reassured me that I could reach out anytime, even if I just needed to talk. They also told me that staying away from my family for now is the right decision. It's the best thing I can do for myself. I have to put my well-being first, no matter what's happening in their lives. Because let's be real, Jake and my family have always put themselves first. It's time I do the same. To be honest, I don't think they even need emotional support from me. They have each other. They can figure it out on their own. When my wedding was canceled, when I was completely blindsided and betrayed, no one was there for me. My own parents turned their backs on me and sided with Jake, even though he was the one who did something unforgivable. If anyone deserved to be cast out, it was him. But that's all in the past, and I'm trying to move forward. I won't be able to do that if I let them back into my life now. So I blocked them all again. And this time I'm sticking to my decision. No more contact. I do feel sorry for what happened to Jake. No matter what he did, I don't wish harm on him. I hope he recovers. I hope everything turns out fine for them. But I'm washing my hands of the situation. Right now, my focus is on my own mental health. I've been thinking about going back to therapy because, honestly, my parents' words hurt me more than I expected. I thought I was past all of this, but everything they said brought back emotions I haven't felt in years. I need to talk to a professional because, as much as I want to pretend I'm fine, I'm not coping with this as well as I thought. Old wounds are reopening, and I refuse to let them drag me back to that dark place again. So for now, I'm choosing to take care of myself. Update 2. I found out from a few relatives that Jake's condition is still critical. It's been almost 2 weeks, and there haven't been any signs of improvement. My family is really struggling, and while I do feel bad for them, there's nothing I can do. Pretty much everyone who knows my family has visited Jake in the hospital at least once, offering their condolences and support. Everyone except me. I would have gone, but then I learned something that made my blood boil. My parents have been spreading disgusting rumors about me to everyone who visits Jake. Apparently, they're telling people that they begged me to come support the family, but I refused. Worse, they're accusing me of saying that this is karma for what happened 5 years ago and that Jake deserved this. For the record, I never said anything even close to that. Some people actually reached out to me because they couldn't believe it. They said it didn't sound like something I would say, and they wanted to hear my side of the story. I was honest with them. I told them my parents were making it up to make me look like the villain. I don't know if they're doing it just to get a reaction out of me, or if they're genuinely that awful. Either way, it hurt. I can't believe my own parents are bad-mouthing me like this, especially after everything they did to ruin my life in the first place. If my relatives hadn't come to me directly, I don't even know if they would have believed me. And if they had believed my parents' lies, I probably would have lost my entire extended family over this. For the past 5 years, I've had no contact with my parents, but I've stayed close to my aunt, uncle, and cousins. They've supported me through everything. And now it seems like my parents can't stand that. Maybe they want me to be completely isolated. Maybe they're so bitter that I didn't crawl back to them that they're trying to destroy the relationships I do have. I just don't get it. Why do they hate me this much? I've never done anything to deserve this. Jake and I were never particularly close growing up, and my parents always favored him. That was obvious from childhood. But this is beyond anything I ever imagined. Update 3. Hey everyone. I posted my last update 2 days ago, and today, my mother decided to contact me again. Since I've blocked both her and my father on everything, she had no choice but to show up in person. When I got home from work, she was already there, waiting. Honestly, I had zero desire to talk to her. I was exhausted from work, and the last thing I needed was to deal with more family drama. I almost turned right back around and got in my car, but she saw me before I could leave, so I had no choice but to walk up to her. I refused to let her into my house. If I did, getting her to leave would be a nightmare. Instead, I told her we could talk outside. In hindsight, that was a mistake, because by the time things escalated, she was screaming loud enough to attract my neighbor's attention. At first, the conversation started off somewhat normal. She talked, I gave short, polite responses, but I could only keep that up for so long. Finally, I snapped and asked her, why was she telling people all these lies about me? Why was she making me out to be some kind of heartless villain? I told her it wasn't fair. I had never once wished anything bad on our family, even after everything they did to me. All I wanted was to live my own life. But even that was too much to ask, because they were still making things miserable for me. I had been holding in these feelings for years, and the second I saw my mother, they all came flooding out. I finally told her the truth, that after everything that happened, I couldn't see them as my family anymore, because they had never treated me like family. I was disappointed in them, disgusted even, and whatever she had come to say, it would have to wait, because I had just gotten home from work and wasn't about to waste my time on another exhausting, emotional conversation. Up until that point, she had been listening quietly. But the moment I said I didn't want to talk anymore, that was when she lost it. That was when she started shouting. She claimed she had come to apologize, that she and my father had reflected on everything and realized they had been unfair to me these past 5 years. That they had only been so angry at first because they were upset that I refused to support the family or visit Jake in the hospital. But now that they understood why I stayed away, she had come to talk, to try to fix things. Apparently, my refusal to talk to her ruined that. She went from, let's make amends, to let me scream in your face, in a matter of seconds. Then she told me I should be grateful I even have a family. She claimed that after my reaction to Jake's accident, she had seriously considered cutting me off completely and making sure the rest of the family did, too. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I asked her to explain. That's when she said she felt my response to the accident had been too cold. She claimed I didn't sound sad enough when she told me about Jake, that my tone on the phone was dry and indifferent. I have no idea what she expected from me. Obviously, I was upset when I heard about the accident. I never wished harm on Jake, or anyone in my family, for that matter. Maybe my emotions didn't come across over the phone, but to say my reaction was wrong just because she didn't hear the response she wanted? That's ridiculous. Then she went even further, saying the fact that I didn't drop everything to be with Emily and my nephew proved I didn't care about my family. At this point, I could tell she was just making up excuses to justify everything she and my father had done. I honestly think they're losing their minds because none of this makes any sense. By then, she was full on yelling at me in my front yard. I was done. I told her to leave. She kept screaming. So I turned around, walked inside, and shut the door in her face. She tried to follow me in, but I slammed the door before she could, told her I was done talking, and warned her that if she didn't leave, I'd call the police. That was when she finally backed off. But before she left, she spat one final insult at me. She told me I would soon suffer the consequences of my actions. I have no idea what she meant by that. And honestly, I don't even care. Update 4. Hey, it's been 26 days since the accident, and today my family finally got some good news. News they made sure to share with everyone. Except me, of course. I only found out through my cousins. The good news? Jake is finally getting better. He's out of the coma and is responsive, which is a huge relief. I really hope he continues to improve because, no matter what happened between us, I wouldn't wish this kind of suffering on anyone. The past month has been brutal for my family, and even though I'm no longer considered part of them, it's been difficult for me too. That being said, my parents' behavior over the past 26 days has been downright unhinged. I honestly think they've been using me as a punching bag, taking out all their anger and frustration on me because they had nowhere else to direct it. After my last interaction with my mother, I thought things would finally calm down. And for a few days, nothing happened. But then, Instead of her, my father decided it was his turn to harass me. He used a different number, so I didn't recognize it. When I picked up, he immediately started screaming, so fast and loud that I barely had time to process that it was even him. I think he planned it that way. Instead of calling me at a normal hour, he waited until 5 a.m., knowing I'd be half asleep and caught off guard. He called 4 times, and on the 4th I groggily picked up. That's when he let loose. He screamed that I was an ungrateful child and that he wished I had never been born. He swore he'd make sure the rest of the family never spoke to me again because I was a horrible person for not visiting Jake in the hospital or supporting them through such a difficult time. He went on like this for 5 minutes straight. I was barely awake, still trying to grasp what was even happening. And then, just like that, he hung up. By the time I fully processed what had happened, he had already blocked me. At the time, I was too shocked to find it funny. But now I can't help but laugh. The sheer desperation my parents have to make me out as the bad guy is honestly ridiculous. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, they just needed a scapegoat. And as always, I was the perfect target. The good news? It didn't work. My father couldn't turn the rest of the family against me because they know I'm not the villain here. They still remember what happened 5 years ago. Now that Jake is getting better, I really hope my parents stop obsessing over me and redirect their focus where it should have been all along, on him. Update 5. Hey everyone. Feels so weird to be writing an update after almost 3 years. So much has happened since then, and for the most part it's been good changes. I now live in Germany. I moved here for work about a year and a half ago, and I've been loving it. Even better, I've been in a relationship for the past 8 months. And this has honestly been one of the happiest times of my life. As for my family, well, I haven't spoken to my parents at all in the last 3 years, and honestly, that's for the best. But I have stayed in touch with the relatives who actually care about me. And as for Jake, he made a full recovery. Took a long time, but he eventually pulled through and is doing fine now. The last time I heard from Emily was shortly after Jake started getting better. Out of nowhere, she reached out, wanting to talk and apologize for everything that happened in the past. But by that point, I didn't need an apology. She only came to me after finding out I was moving to Germany. She even showed up with flowers, saying she was apologizing on behalf of both herself and Jake. Apparently, he didn't have the courage to face me because he was too ashamed of what happened all those years ago. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter to me anymore. I told her I forgave them. And not because I needed closure or because I wanted to fix anything. I forgave them because I genuinely didn't care anymore. I had moved on. I had built a new life and they were no longer part of it. Since then, I haven't heard from my parents at all. And I'm so glad because under no circumstances will I ever let them interfere in my life again. Now I'm finally happy. And to everyone who followed my story, left kind messages, or even just checked in after I stopped posting updates. Thank you. Seriously, your support meant the world to me. And with that, I guess this is where my story ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.